Think about how much we rely on software today. I mean, it's everywhere.
It really is. Pockets, cars, critical infrastructure.
Exactly. And that makes building it securely just incredibly important. When things go wrong, well, the impact can be huge.
Yeah.
We saw that, didn't we, with the SolarWinds attack? That was really sophisticated stuff targeting the software supply chain.
Oh, absolutely. A major wake-up call. It really showed how vulnerable those digital foundations can be.
It proved it's not just about the final software, is it?
Not at all. It's the whole creation and distribution process. A compromise there.
Yeah.
Well, it can spread so far and be so hard to even spot.
Yeah, it's insidious. And that's really what we're diving into today, securing that whole software development pipeline, specifically CI/CD.
Continuous integration, continuous delivery.
And sometimes continuous deployment, right?
Yeah.
Now look, even if you've never touched code, this matters.
Definitely.
The security of the apps you use every single day, it depends on these pipelines. So understanding the risks, the solutions, it just gives you a clearer picture.
Think of it like an automated factory for software. If you don't build security into that factory line from the start,
You're just churning out potentially vulnerable products.
Exactly. So our mission today is to dig into this using some really valuable sources. We're looking at CI/CD security hardening guides.
The ITIR ATT and CK framework.
Yeah, specific threats and vulnerabilities in CI/CD, DevSecOps using GitHub Actions, open source intelligence, OSINT.
And, of course, the OWASP Top 10. That keeps evolving, doesn't it?
Constantly.
Okay, so the goal here is simple. Pull out the key insights, the actionable stuff from all this. We want to understand the weak spots in CI/CD pipelines.
And crucially, how to build more secure software right from the get-go.
Right. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is CI/CD? Why is it so, essential now?
Okay, so CI/CD. It's basically a set of practices to automate and streamline making software. The CI part, continuous integration. That's about developers merging their code changes frequently, like multiple times a day sometimes.
Into one central place.
Into a shared repository, yeah. And each time they do, it triggers automated builds and tests.
So you catch problems early.
That's the idea. Catch integration issues fast before they become big headaches.
It's like a sports team practicing drills constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Not just waiting for game day to find out something's broken.
That's a great analogy, yeah. Then you've got continuous delivery, the first CD. This means after all the automated tests pass, the code is essentially always ready to be released.
Always deployable.
Right. It might go to a staging area, and maybe there's a manual button push for the final release, but it's ready.
So pack and ready to ship, but a human makes the final call.
Usually, yeah. And then there's the other CD, continuous deployment. That takes it one step further.
Fully automated.
Fully automated. If the code passes all the checks, bam, it goes straight into production. Live. No manual intervention.
Wow. Okay. That requires a lot of trust in your automated tests.
Absolutely. It's all about maximizing speed, getting features and fixes out to users ASAP. But yeah, your testing and monitoring have to be rock solid.
So it sounds like CI/CD offers some really big wins for development teams.
Oh, huge. Faster cycles, way more efficiency because you automate all the repetitive stuff, and you can respond much quicker to, user needs or market changes.
And releasing smaller updates more often is maybe less risky?
Inherently less risky than giant, infrequent releases, yeah. If something does go wrong, like a security flaw, it's much easier to pinpoint and fix quickly. Some places have cut down the time to fix vulnerabilities from months to days using these practices.
Okay, speed, efficiency, agility. Got it. But as our sources keep stressing, if these pipelines aren't secure, they become a massive target.
That's the flip side, absolutely. The automation that makes it powerful. It can also automate pushing out vulnerabilities if security isn't baked in. Attackers see these pipelines as, gold mines.
Because they have access to everything.
Often, yeah. Source code, build systems, maybe container registries. The core ingredients of the application, a breach there can be catastrophic.
Right. So let's talk weak points. What are the common vulnerabilities attackers go after in a CI/CD pipeline?
Well, one really significant one is insecure dependencies. Software today isn't built from scratch, right?
No, you use lots of third-party code, libraries.
Exactly. Frameworks, components. And if those have known vulnerabilities, the CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exposures, and you're not keeping them updated,
you're inheriting their problems.
Precisely. We've seen major supply chain attacks happen this way. One bad library affects thousands of apps downstream, sometimes for months before anyone notices.
It's like building that bridge with faulty materials you mentioned. The whole thing's weak from the start. Our sources mention tools like Dependabot, SNCC. How do they help?
They're invaluable, really. They automate checking your dependencies. They'll tell you, hey, this library you're using, it has a known vulnerability.
And they can even fix it.
Often they can automatically create the request to update it to a safe version. Just keeping an inventory and patching regularly is critical. These tools shrink that window of opportunity for attackers dramatically.
Okay, so managing dependencies is key. Another one highlighted is unsecured build environments. What's that about?
So the build environment is where the magic happens, where the code gets compiled and packaged.
Factory floor itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the servers or containers running the pipeline aren't secured properly, maybe they have extra software running, open ports they don't need.
An attacker could get in there.
They could. And if they compromise the build environment, they could potentially mess with the build process itself. Inject malicious code right into your software.
Oh.
Or steal sensitive stuff used during the build, like API keys or credentials.
So it's not just the code repo, it's the machines doing the building. How do you secure those? Hardening, the source called it.
Using secure containers or VMs is a big one. Isolate each build, so if one gets compromised, hopefully it doesn't spread.
Contain the blast radius.
Right. And just base and hygiene, only install what's absolutely necessary on those build agents, lock down network access, keep the infrastructure itself patched and updated, reduce that attack surface.
Got it. And then there's the one that always seems to come up. Misconfiguration and mismanagement of secrets.
Ah, yes. The classic. Putting sensitive stuff like passwords, API keys, database connection details, putting them directly in your code or pipeline config files.
Just plain text.
Sometimes, yeah. Or maybe slightly obscured, but still there. If that code ends up in a repository, even a private one that gets breached, or someone gets access to the config.
Those secrets are just exposed, game over.
Pretty much. So the advice isn't just hide them better, it's don't put them there at all.
Exactly. Use dedicated secrets management tools. Things like HashiCorp Vault, AWS Secrets Manager, Azure Key Vault.
Tools designed for this purpose.
Right. They store secrets securely, manage access tightly, and can even handle rotating secrets automatically. It massively reduces the risk of exposure.
Okay, so dependencies, build environment secrets. Those are big ones. Now let's flip it. How do we proactively build more secure pipelines? The sources talk about a layered approach. Defense in depth. That's the core idea. Don't rely on just one control. Build multiple layers of security. If one layer fails, hopefully another catches it.
And a key philosophy here is DevSecOps, right?
Yeah, DevSecOps. It's about integrating security into every stage. Not treating it as a separate thing you tack on at the end, but building it into the development lifecycle and especially into the CI/CD pipeline itself.
So security becomes everyone's job, baked into the process.
That's the goal. And organizations doing this well often see a big drop in vulnerabilities making it to production.
So what are some of those layers? What practices fall under DevSecOps in the pipeline?
Well, strong access controls are absolutely fundamental. Using strict permissions.
The principle of least privilege.
Exactly that. Give automated processes only the minimum access they need to do their job. Nothing more.
Makes sense.
And add multi-factor authentication, MFA for humans. That's critical. Plus, role-based access control, RBAC, to manage permissions based on roles, not individuals, keeps things consistent.
Limit who can touch what, basically.
Okay.
And then there's automated security testing. This sounds key.
Hugely important. This is where you embed security checks right into the automated workflow.
Like SaaS static. Application security testing.
Right. SaaS tools scan your source code without running it. They look for patterns that indicate potential vulnerabilities. Think of it as an automated security code review.
Finds problems early in the code itself.
Yeah, finds them early. Tools like Sonar Cloud integrate nicely with things like GitHub Actions to do this automatically when code is pushed. They look for bugs, security flaws, code smells.
Okay, so SA looked at the raw code. What about SCA?
SCA is software composition analysis. This goes back to those dependencies we talked about.
Check in the third-party stuff.
Exactly. SCA tools like SNCC, which we mentioned, scan your project to see what libraries you're using and check them against databases of known vulnerabilities, those CVEs.
And they flag the risky ones.
They flag them, yeah, and often suggest safe versions to update to. Essential for managing that dependency risk we discussed.
So SAST for your code, SEA for the code you borrow. What's DAST then? Dynamic.
Dynamic Application Security Testing. DAST takes a different approach. It tests the application while it's actually running.
Like a user would interact with it.
Sort of, but like a malicious user. It probes the running application from the outside, often without seeing the source code, a black box approach. It looks for runtime vulnerabilities like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, things you might miss just looking at the code.
So it tests the finished product in action.
Precisely. OWASP Zabbie is a popular open-source DAST tool you can wire into your CI/CD pipeline, maybe using GitHub Actions again, to automatically test your web app after it's deployed to a test environment.
Okay, so SAST, SEA, DESI, using all three seems like a really robust approach. Plus the basics we covered. Keeping dependencies updated, managing secrets securely.
Exactly. Those automated tests, combined with good dependency and secrets hygiene, they form the backbone of a strong, layered security posture for your pipeline.
Right. Now, to really understand the threats, the sources bring up the ITR, ATT, and CK framework. That sounds like a big deal for understanding the attacker's view.
It really is. ITR, ATT, and CK. Think of it as this huge, curated knowledge base. It catalogs the tactics and techniques attackers use based on real-world observations.
So how hackers actually operate?
Pretty much. Across different stages of an attack, different platforms, enterprise, mobile, industrial control systems, it breaks down why an attacker does something that's the tactic, like gaining initial access or achieving persistence.
Their goal.
Right. And then how they do it, that's the technique. Like maybe they exploit a public-facing application or use spear phishing.
The specific method.
Exactly. And there are even sub-techniques for more granular detail. Understanding this, say, the credential access tactic and the secret discovery technique directly tells you why secure secrets management in your pipeline is so vital.
Our source mentions using it for red teaming, adversary emulation. How does that work in practice?
Well, security teams use ATT and CK to create realistic test scenarios. Red teams plan simulated attacks using known adversary TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures to see how well defenses hold up.
Find the weaknesses before the real attackers do.
Exactly. It's also great for developing better detection methods, looking for those specific malicious behaviors, and identifying gaps in your security coverage. It provides a common language.
Okay. And how do the vulnerabilities we talked about, like those insecure dependencies, how do they map onto ATT and CK technique?
They often represent the entry points or enablers for ATT and CK techniques, that vulnerable dependency. Exploiting it could be the exploit public-facing application technique under the initial access tactic.
Ah, I see the connection.
Once they're in via that vulnerability, they might then use other ATT and CK techniques to move around, maybe dump credentials or inject code into the build process using a technique under execution or persistence.
It really highlights how one vulnerability can open the door for a whole chain of attacker actions. Okay, another term that came up. OSINT. Open source intelligence. How does digging through public info help secure CI/CD?
OSINT is all about gathering and analyzing publicly available information. For CI/CD security, this can mean monitoring things like forums, security blogs, social media, even code repositories or job postings.
Looking for what?
Clues. Maybe discussions about new vulnerabilities in the specific CI/CD tools you use, or common attack patterns people are seeing, sometimes even accidental disclosures of sensitive info by companies themselves.
Like finding configuration details accidentally pushed to a public repo.
That kind of thing, yeah. The OSINT framework website actually lists loads of free tools you can use for this kind of intelligence gathering. It's about proactive threat awareness.
Staying ahead by keeping your ear to the ground online. Got it. And then the OWASP POP 10. Many listeners might know this one.
Yeah, it's a standard awareness document for web app security. Really influential. It lists the 10 most critical risks.
And how does that relate directly to CI/CD?
Well, many of those top 10 risks can be introduced through an insecure pipeline, or the pipeline itself could be exploited using those types of vulnerabilities. Think about injection flaws, insecure design, security misconfiguration, vulnerable and outdated components.
That last one ties right back to dependencies.
Exactly. They're all highly relevant. And remember, OSP updates it the next one's due in 2025, reflecting how threats change.
A constant reminder that security isn't static. The sources also mentioned, have I been pwned? How does checking for breach accounts fit in?
It's more about context, really. It doesn't directly scan your pipeline, obviously. But if, say, a developer's corporate email shows up in a breach listed on have I been pwned,
that credential might be used to access the CI/CD system.
Potentially, yeah. Especially if they reuse passwords or didn't have MFA enabled. So finding credentials in breaches underlines the critical need for strong authentication on pipeline access points. It shows the real-world risk.
Okay, that makes sense. We've covered a lot of the theory, the threats, the frameworks. Let's get practical. GitHub Actions came up specifically for building secure CI/CD workflows.
Yeah, GitHub Actions is really popular. It lets you build automation right inside your GitHub repository. And the great thing from a security viewpoint is how easily you can plug in those security tools we talked about.
SAST, ACA, DCA, you can make them part of the workflow.
Exactly. You define steps in your workflow. So one step might be run a Sonar Cloud scan every time code is pushed. Another step, run SNCC to check dependencies. Automatically. You could even have a workflow that deploys to a test environment, then triggers an OWASP ZAPS scan against that deployment, all before it goes anywhere near production.
So you bake the security checks right into the automation.
Right. The workflow itself is usually defined in a simple file. You specify the trigger, the jobs, the environment, and the sequence of steps, each running a command or using a pre-built action. Integrating Sonar Cloud, SNCC, ZAP. It's a really practical way to do DevSecOps. Plus, your security checks are version controlled and auditable alongside your code.
That sounds incredibly powerful. Making security just part of the process.
Yeah.
Okay, one last big point from the sources. Adopting an attacker mindset. What does that mean for the people securing these pipelines?
It means thinking like the bad guy, basically. Proactively asking yourself, if I wanted to break this pipeline, how would I do it? Where are the weak spots?
Trying to anticipate attacks.
Exactly, instead of just reacting. It helps you identify vulnerabilities from their perspective so you can prioritize fixing them. This often involves things like penetration testing or red team exercises.
Where you actually simulate an attack.
Yeah, simulate real-world attacks to see where the defenses break down. Find the holes before someone else does.
Proactive defense. And it sounds like this isn't a one-and-done thing. Cybersecurity keeps changing.
Oh, constantly. New vulnerabilities pop up daily. New attack techniques get developed. You absolutely have to stay informed. Keep an eye on things like the CVE lists, the NIST National Vulnerability Database.
Continuous learning.
Continuous learning, continuous improvement. It's essential to keep your CI/CD pipeline secure in the long run.
Okay, wow. We've covered a huge amount of ground here, really gone deep into securing CI/CD. Let's try and boil it down. What are the absolute key takeaways for listeners?
Okay, first, CI/CD is vital for modern software, but it's a major target. Security must be layered and integrated throughout. It can't be an afterthought.
Right.
Second, common vulnerabilities exist: dependencies, build environments, secrets, but they can be mitigated. DevSecOps principles and automated testing, SAST, SCA, DAST, are your best friends here.
Got it. Automated checks are key.
Third, understanding the threat landscape is crucial. Frameworks like MITRE ET TNCK give you the attacker's playbook. Resources like OWASP POP10 and OSINT help you stay aware of current risks.
Context matters.
Definitely. And finally,
It's ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need that proactive attacker mindset, and you need to keep learning. It's not set it and forget it.
exactly. It's a continuous journey of vigilance and adaptation. Security is never done.
So, as you, our listener, go about your day using all this software, maybe take a moment. Think about the apps on your phone, the websites you visit. What steps do you think their developers are taking or should be taking to secure the pipeline that built them?
Yeah, what questions does this raise for you about the tools you rely on?
Maybe check out some of those resources we mentioned, MITRE AT TNCK, OWASP, the OSINT framework. Even Have I Been Pwned?
Just being more aware. Well, that's a crucial first step in navigating our digital world securely.